Entrepreneurship in Pakistan is both easy and difficult. I think what the easy part is that I think there's a lot of family support in Pakistan. I mean, if you're living out of house, you're a young person, I mean, what is it that you need? I mean, you have food 3 times a day, your bills are paid off. If you're a young person, it's very easy to be an entrepreneur. But I think later on, once you need to scale your business, that's where the problems are. Because in other countries, you have things like venture capital and you have things like private equity, and of course, those structures are not in place in Pakistan. To scale up, that's not quite there yet. But at least to begin with, there definitely are opportunities. And I think especially in the areas where there's a lot of intellectual capital, I mean, I think there's a lot more possibilities for entrepreneurship, because I think you can communicate with people over the internet. I mean, the world is becoming a smaller place, and it just makes your life so much easier. If you're not dealing with physical goods, being an entrepreneur is actually very easy in that area. And I think that's why we, as Pakistan Software Export Board, are very keen on increasing the entrepreneurship in the IT arena, and not just IT, anything that has to do with engineering and making something that that uses a lot of intellectual capital. Intellectual property is definitely a challenge, and I think we need to work on that. Again, if you're making things for the global market, that becomes less of a problem, because I mean, your audience is the whole globe. And if you're making something for the local market, then definitely it's an issue. And payment gateways, obviously, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to receive money for your products and services that you're out there to sell to the rest of the world. So that would definitely be a big help. And I think more than payment gateway, I think another important part of that is that it needs to be very efficient in terms of economics. For example, I mean, if I was in the US right now, I could trade on eBay, and I could use eBay's payment mechanism, and I think it's almost zero cost to begin with. And I mean, in Pakistan, even if there were modes of transactions available, I think they're very costly, and I think that becomes difficult for entrepreneurs to sustain at this point. Personally, I believe it's not a matter of economies of scale. I think it's a matter of mindset. I mean, even if you're living in the US, for example, and you want to do a wire transfer, I mean, it will cost you, at a large bank, about anywhere from $40 to $60. And I think the reason is that the traditional banks have been coming from the older mindset, when it actually used to cost a lot of money. I mean, now with internet and you actually being able to do a transaction, so quickly, I mean, come on, I mean, $60 is way too much. And that's why I think, I mean, even in the West, the larger banks were taken by surprise when there were more efficient mechanisms that got developed. And I think the same can happen in Pakistan also. So because I think inherently the cost of doing transactions is very low right now, because you're going on public gateways. You don't need to make any dedicated connections between countries. So I think it's inherently efficient. It just takes some will for people to actually implement it. And I think part of it is regulatory part also, because I think the state bank needs to come in and say, look, we want to enable it, and then it will happen, of course. Not doing enough of a market research, like what is it that you need out there. I think it works both ways. For example, in technology, people always say, look, I mean, you don't know where the application of this technology is going to be. I'm going to make something, and hopefully, an application that works for things which are fundamentally, groundbreaking. But a lot of time, I think you have to see what the market is, and where you will actually sell it, and go talk to a few people, and share your idea in confidence with them that this is what you're trying to do, and hopefully that will lead to something. And I think the other thing that people don't do very well is actually form a group of trusted advisors. Any company in the world that has actually done well, and all the way from Microsoft and Google and all that, I mean, all these folks had trusted advisors who were giving them sound, good advice in the beginning. So I think that's very important to have a circle of people that you can count on to get advice, and always have that sounding board available to you. This is something that I tell my students all the time, because I teach a course in entrepreneurship, and I say, look, if you're afraid that you leave your job and you can't come back to that job or better, then you probably either are not smart enough to start a business. But here's what I'm saying. I mean, people who are really, really smart at what they're doing, they'll always find something good to do. That was true right now, and that's true. That was true 10 years ago. When I graduated from University of Lahore, there were a lot less entrepreneurial opportunities available. But the But my fellow students who were very, very good at even at that time, they never had a problem finding a job. I mean, there's always enough to do in an expanding, economy like us. I mean, just look at the number of people that we have in Pakistan, and there's always things to do and problems to solve. So you should take, you should find comfort in the feeling that if you're smart enough and you're dedicated enough, leaving your job is not a problem, because 2 years down the road there would always be a job available for you. One of the things we have is an incubator that we have started earlier this year, and the idea is to provide sort of the riskiest capital, meaning that young folks who have just graduated from university or colleges and have a fairly decent idea in terms of either a final year project or 2 years out of school, they think that they have an important problem that they can solve, and it's a need of the hour. So what we provide is we provide office space, we provide some initial capital to get started, and we also provide a very, not significant, but a small stipend on a monthly basis. At least it covers to what we call it, it covers your fuel and food. But you can come in here, and the best thing about this is that we get you hooked up with a bunch of advisors. And that actually becomes your board of advisors, and then I think that, as I said before, advisors is a key thing to being having good advisors is a key thing to have a good successful venture. So all in all, I think it's an experiment. I mean, I don't know where it will go, but I think it's an interesting experiment, and we'll see a year from now how successful or not so successful we are.